Hey, 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 good morning, good morning, good morning. Hello, Darren. Hello, Mick. Welcome to the Eddie Presser pre-Man United. I'm flying solo this morning, it would appear. So help me out in the chat. Give me something to talk about. Not that I haven't got enough to talk about anyway, by the way. But first of all, get the housekeeping out of the way. Welcome along, everybody. Please, please, please smash that like button, help the channel. Get involved in the chat, share, subscribe, hit the bell button so you don't miss anything and all that lovely stuff. Become a member if you can, super chat if you can. And let's get on with the show. So we've got Man United coming up in the first of arguably 6 games, I suppose, if you include the Mackems, which are going to pretty much define the season. We've got the 2 league games against Man United at home and Chelsea away. Then we've got Man City in the FA Cup. And in the middle of all that, we've got 2 lovely games against Barcelona. More of that later. But not on the... and that, of course, is then followed by the Mackems, which could be the straw that broke the camel's back, I fear. Certainly, if we turn up against the Mackems anywhere like we did at Joker Park, I think we will then see the St. James's crowd turn big style. But we're not there yet, and there's plenty water to go under the bridge before then. As everybody who watches this channel will know, I still haven't completely given up on our manager, as a lot of people have done. And rightly so. There are multiple very valid reasons why he should be criticised, and I don't think he's above criticism. I just think he's, and I go back to the credit in the bank, he's got enough credit in the bank to make sure that I believe anyway, we should stick with him and see what happens. Kevin Bell is saying in the chat there, morning, Kevin, what a privilege to be playing all these amazing games. Just a shame we're playing terribly right now and hard to look forward to them as much. We won't lose them all. FA Cup should be the priority. Well, there's the thing. Should the FA Cup be the priority? Are you saying that on the basis that you're giving up on the Barcelona games in the Champions League? Because I think that Champions League draw, for a change, was very kind to Eddie in terms of our side of the draw now is, as far as I can see, is basically Barcelona and Arsenal. And we don't meet Arsenal until the quarter-final. So for me, I think we can beat Barcelona over 2 legs. Obviously not playing the way we're playing at the minute, we can't. We've got to get some oomph back, which is what Eddie's job is. And we'll see if he's up to it. Because, again, as I've said all along, when we're going through the same bad patch, which wasn't as bad last year as it is this year, I said stick with them and look what happened. So let's judge the season when it's finished. But I do believe that if we haven't qualified for Europe, I don't think he will need dismissing. I think Eddie will probably walk away. And good on him for doing that. However, anyway, what's that? 4 wins, and it's another trophy, and we're in Europe. 4 wins, not giving up on Barcelona, but we don't win the Champions League. We won't win the Champions League. FA Cup is our best route to success. Well, except what you're saying there is we've got a better chance of beating Man City than we have of beating Barcelona. And I'm not sure I agree with that. I think Man City are probably the more difficult of the two teams to get a result on. Win being on the happy backy, not at all. I've just got out of bed, if that's what you mean. And I think at the end of the season, we need a refresh. Unfortunately, Eddie's time is up. Yeah, well, that's a popularly held belief. I think I would be prepared quite comfortably, as long as, we end the season reasonably well, especially if we qualify for Europe, to give them some proper money at the right time this summer, not waiting till they're scrabbling around at the end for everybody else's cast-offs. Get the job done properly. We've got a director of football in place now that we didn't have. We should have the structure up ahead. We know Hopkinson's all coming out with we're going to be the best club in the world by 2030. Well, good luck with that at the minute. Excuse me. I can't see it happening personally. There's a load of chat going on in the forum and whatnot, pulling me up for what I said yesterday, which didn't go down well in some quarters, which was basically, if you look at our team, at our squad, last season, we had arguably 5 players who could just about walk into any of the other top 6 teams. 5 players, which I would say were Livramento, Hall, Isaac, Tonali, and Bruno. They're the only 5 players that any of the big 6 have been linked with. You could maybe throw Anthony Gordon into that pile as well, because we hear that quite a few of the big 6 are still looking at Anthony Gordon. Out of those, and last season, with those 6 players and the rest of the squad, we qualified for the Champions League and we won the Carabao Cup. But, and it's a big but, that was playing 1 game a week. No Europe. Now this season, with Europe, we've got, since the season started, out of those 6 players, we've been without Isaac for the full season, obviously. He's gone. Livramento's been missing for the best part of it. Lewis Hall was missing for a good few games. And it's, by the way, the 2 games when they came back and played, when we had strikers, because again, we started the season without a striker. What I'm saying basically is there are reasons why we are doing as poorly. Now, does that excuse some of the ridiculous, it would appear, tactical and team selection decisions that have been made this season? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. But when you accept, I suppose it's a question of whether you accept it or not, that the squad that Eddie's got to choose from, despite me saying on multiple occasions, it's the strongest squad we've had ever in my lifetime, it's still not in the same league as some of the bigger, some of the teams that we are competing with in every competition. So I just think there's valid reasons why it ain't happening. Now, can Eddie turn it around? We don't know. Paul Sprague here at Jazz Ball. It'll be hard to attract top players without any Europe. It will. And yet, we attracted Bruno and Trips and Botman without Europe. Isaac without Europe. So it's not impossible. It's a lot more difficult to get the better players. But in any event, as we found out, when we go for the better players, and needless to say, the other top clubs are also interested in those better players choose to go to other clubs and not come to the Toon. Question has to be asked, why is Howe playing players out of position, Pope leaking goals more than my own leaky tap? Howe needs Nick to stop playing too deep. All totally valid points. Let's take them one by one. Why is he playing players out of position? Well, largely because, you're talking, well, unless you're talking about, were you talking about J7 maybe he's going on the left wing last night instead of on whatever night it was, Saturday night, instead of Ramsey? They could have been switched. You've mentioned Nick playing in midfield as opposed to up top, except as I've said, what we found was when Nick did drop into midfield and Gordon went up front, we started winning games and scoring goals. Now, everybody argue, against a pub team and against 10-man Aston Villa. Again, valid points. But nonetheless, it did appear to work, and we did look better for it. We definitely looked better for it. And do I think Volta is a number 9? No, I don't. I think he's a number 10 at best. Yeah. Howe needs to win the FA Cup, says Darren. And David Jolly, most of the players went to other clubs for bigger wages. Well, that's the whole point. Kenny's saying I'm reading a 21-year-old keeper and a 29-year-old Colombian striker. I don't want to be buying any more 29-year-olds. Thank you very much. I think that expression's great. Christina's saying there, he's not a number 9, he's a number 27. I checked. But as you also checked, Christina, 2 and 7, add them together, it gives you 9. Jody up in Edinburgh, I would prefer us not to qualify for the Conference League next season. We must get our house in order. The only problem is there, if, for example, if we don't qualify even for the Conference League, and let's assume that being the case, that Piff stick with Eddie, as is widely rumoured, that they are going to have faith in Eddie. Whether that's right or wrong, all the reports are saying that Piff are by no means finished with him. So let's assume, just for the second, that we don't qualify for Europe. And let's assume next season. Oh, hello. Good morning, Boogie.
Good morning, Win. I was free, so I thought I would join you, mate.
Good for you. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm just saying, if we don't qualify for Europe next season, and Piff do stick with Eddie, which is what all the reports are saying, what we've got next season is another season without 2 games a week. And so let's say next season we'll have another belter season, which we've had every time when we've only had 1 game a week. Does that prove still that Eddie is the guy for the job, or does it prove he's only ever good when he's got a week between games, which is no good for where we want to be?
I think it's a
And I,
double-edged sword, that win, isn't
of
it?
course it is. Of course it is.
Because you
Exactly.
know, we all know what
Yeah.
Eddie can
Yeah.
do when he's got the time to train those players and get them ready for games. So, we know that's his forte. That's how he can develop a team. So at the end of the season, there's a big choice to be made of, if we don't get into Europe, is Eddie the right man still to do the job? And potentially he is, because we haven't got that European competition. But then, is there a decision to
And then
be made the end of the next season?
so then we'll win another cup, qualify for Europe, and sack him because we're weak
That's it.
because you can't do 2 days a week.
I mean, the problem is as well, if we don't get into Europe, we're not going to get the high class of manager that we want. I think the high class manager is going to want would it be in Europe, or is going to want to come in later into the sort of the season. So he's the one that gets you into Europe, then develops from there. So it's an awkward decision, because
It's a
how
dilemma.
how h- how is a 7-day manager, a 7-day between game manager, is a lot better than how that has a lot of games to manage.
Yeah. And on top of that, hopefully, if they do stick with him, they will. I'm not saying hopefully they'll stick with him if we don't get into, but what I'm saying, but if they do stick with him, presumably they will back him. Fine, they're not going to keep him on and then not give him any money. So that what money's there, they've always said they'll spend, so that he'll have the money, or at least the director of football will have the money, presumably, with Eddie having the final say, as we've heard. Uh, if he then, with that better squad, proceeds to have the success that we're pretty sure he would do with one game a week, do you then trust him to go on into the next season and doing two games a week?
It's a million
It's a
dollar question, mate, isn't it?
it's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it?
But I think what we need to make sure this summer is that, yes, Eddie Howe has a say in the players that come in, but I was going to say Ashworth there. It's not, is it? It's
Wilson.
Wilson's in charge of the actual signings who will make, to make sure they're right for the club, not just for the Eddie Howe style of play. So that if
Yeah,
a new manager does come in at some point, they can work with these players as well.
yeah. Just looking.
Yeah. So
Eddie's
when
not.
just in regards to the press conference today, what questions are you hoping to be asked? Is there any question you're hoping to come up?
Well, we're going to do the bingo.
We're going
Uh,
to do the bingo.
yeah. It'll be, hopefully, somebody at least will ask him about Nick Pope. That's one question I would be asking now. Despite the fact that I don't, specifically, I don't solely, should I say, blame Nick Pope for the howler. There were other players as well involved, but it's becoming just too regular. Yes, he makes some great saves, and people argue, of course, that's what he's there for. But these mistakes now are just they're costing us too much, and defensively generally we're pretty poor now, really poor, as the numbers attest. Yeah,
100%. I think the question I want to be here asked is definitely around rotation. Did you know how we
there's
can
Darren.
just
Darren saying the
rotate
question
this
has to
squad?
be asked: Why is Howe playing players out of position? Hope leaking goals. Well, yeah, we've already done that one actually. When I think about it,
But that is a good question. Why did he
yeah,
start the other night with so many players playing the positions that they're not used to playing? we put square pegs in round holes when we had players across the pitch who can play those positions as the natural position.
Well, if you're talking about the lineup, the starting lineup, for example, the only query I've got, if you accept the fact that we've decided, because of the success in the previous games, that Walter was going in the middle and Anthony Gordon was going up top, if you accept that, then the only uh, player out of position, if you like, was the difference between where Ramsey started and where J7 started on the left and mid of that middle four, because I think it was a 4-1-4-1. So you could have Ramsey on the left and J7 inside him, or the way it looked as though he was going, which was J7 on the wing and Ramsey inside with Volta, which a lot of people have been arguing for Ramsey to be that one going forward behind Volta.
But do you not think with Volta as well, Win, in regards to the team selection, Volta we've signed as a striker and we seem to be trying to develop him as a midfielder, which seems ridiculous. Do you not think Volta starting up front in that game, Gordon on the left, J7 central midfield, and then as you see Ramsey pushing forward as the person behind Volta would have been the better shout in regards to
Well,
then you're playing every player in the right position.
well, except that we've tried that all season with
But we
Volta.
haven't. We
Well,
haven't.
we have.
But we haven't. We've never. I'm not going to use Volta here as an excuse, but Volta with Saranda Sula, whenever them guys play up front, they're by themselves. There's nobody being pushing on to help them. There's nobody being in that, if you like, a 10 midfield role to push on and help those guys. The only time that happens is when Gordon goes up front and Volta drops back into the 10 role, which isn't his natural position. So
Yeah, but
why not play people in the right positions?
because as I've I've said a million times, Volta does not get up the pitch. If there's nobody there, he'll stay
Ah,
back and he
but
pulls
but
the
ha-
whole
but but, ha-
team
but
back.
hang on, let's not make this about Volta because I think there's been a lot of discussion. And to be fair, I'm pretty disgusted with the press the way they've went on about Volta. But it isn't a Volta issue because you look at it when we've played Wissa up there and we've played Asula up there, we've had exactly the same issues. So, you can't call one player out when there's two other players coming into the team who are having exactly the same problems, which is we don't get enough players forward with them to help the progression of the team.
But I would argue, my argument is that the don't either Wissa or Volta haven't been pressing forward the way Gordon does press forward for to bring the rest of the team on behind him. If the centre forward keeps on going back, the rest of the team are going to go back in line with him. The centre forward is the spearhead, and again, this gets down to the press. The only way Newcastle United are effective, in my opinion, is when we adopt the press, and when we do that, everybody's got to be at it. Not if you've got two or three players who aren't at it, it doesn't work. It only works when everybody is at it. And like I say, Gordon, when he's up top, he's doing that. He's got the pace and the mobility to press the goalie and go straight across to the fullback and cut those easy passing balls, with the result that they've had to go long. And by and large, we've dealt with it when the ball's been going long. And that's what the game's built on. But it's got to be everybody doing it. And when Walter has been up front, it hasn't happened, in my opinion.
But when you say that about Gordon, and I completely agree, in the cup competitions, he's 100% done that. He has been sort of that player. But why doesn't he then do it in the Premier League games? Why isn't he following that sort of performance up in the Everton game?
Well,
Yes,
as
he can do it, but he chooses the games he does it in, or he can only do it in certain games. Is I suppose the point.
it's maybe unfortunate, as Jamie pointed out yesterday, that the next game in the run that we had was Everton. because historically, since Gordon joined us from Everton, he's been absolutely rubbish in all those games. And Jamie alluded to the fact that it's a man, you know, he's
But when
supposed to.
it's not just the Everton game. You look at his performances across the Premier League games we've had this season so far, and it's been the same issue. It's been Gordon can get himself up, or for some reason the team play different when we're in a cup competition. But when it comes to the Premier League, Gordon isn't the player that we're seeing playing in the Champions League.
No, because by and large, in the Premier League games that we've played, up until the last little run of games, he hasn't been doing the pressing. We've had Volta or Wissa there at the top doing the pressing. The only time Gordon was up top early on again, and we did okay then, by the way. But, you know, they weren't brilliant, but we weren't getting hammered. You know, there was all the nil-nils and that because of the pressing that we were doing. So the results early on in the season, whilst we thought at the time they were poor, you know, not being able to beat Leeds away and so on and so forth. But we got, you know, we kept a clean sheet at Aston Villa. Should have won that game, as we know. So it was when Walter Marder and Wissa were available that Gordon then went on the wing, and the other games that we're having, apart from the 1-0 against Wolves, we haven't done anything when he's been on the wing.
But why is Gordon's sort of stats and everything you look at so different Premier League wise to cup wise? You know, he seems to have it seems as if we've got a different player when he's playing, especially Champions League football, to the player that we see playing domestic football.
Because the teams we're playing in the Champions League are not as good as the teams we're playing in the Premiership. That's the answer to that.
So that's a big point you've made there, Win, in which case, because I completely agree with you. The Champions League has been downgraded, in my view, the way it's been set up the last few seasons in this league format. So, you know, is it such a big thing that we've got through to the last 16? I honestly think the majority of Premier League teams, I think down to probably about 15th, 16th in the Premier League, would get through to the last 16 of the Champions League.
Oh,
you know, because
here we go.
Yeah, we'll go.
Sorry, Brian. Lovely to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
Morning. Morning, Craig. Morning.
Morning.
Morning, Martin. Oh, it's good, wasn't he? Unbelievable.
Morning, everyone. We've got the usual 20 minutes. We'll start with the broadcasters, 3 questions each, and then 1 from the written press, please. So we'll start with you, Reza.
Thank you. Good morning, Eddie. Firstly, please, could you update us on Jacob Ramsey, who came out for the second half at the weekend but couldn't play on because of sickness?
Yeah, Jacob was in yesterday, trained fine, so a quick recovery from him. There's obviously an illness potentially there in the squad because Nick Voltamardo's gone downhill and we haven't seen him for a couple of days.
So you'd expect Voltamardo not to be available tomorrow night then?
Let's see, we'll give him every chance.
On Jacob Ramsey, obviously, it was a blow to lose him at the weekend. He'd scored the goal and he'd been playing well in that match. And in recent games, he's been particularly good, hasn't he? Which must be really pleasing for you.
Yeah, he's getting better and better for me. When we first signed him, I think it was really clear from the training that we were doing how good technically Jacob is. I mean, he's very rarely wastes a ball. He's really good in tight areas, and he has good athleticism as well to add to the other side. So I think he's got a little bit of everything, and it's been great to see him score a couple of really important goals for us. Because I think naturally playing in midfield, I think you need to contribute in that area as well. So I think that would have done his confidence levels, those 2 goals, the world of good. I think he now feels fully here and at home and comfortable with what he's being asked to do. So I think really positive signs for him that he can only get better from this point as well.
Can I just check quickly on Tino Livramento? Is this going to be too soon for him, this match?
Yeah, I think possibly. I think he's getting closer and closer. I know asked a lot about him, and I understand why, because I do the same to the medical team. It's like a chain that goes down. we're desperate for him to be back available, but it has to be at the right time. And every injury situation is not always as simple as you give a return date and the player comes back. There's always little things that can happen either way. I think he's slightly ahead of the schedule initially given, but yeah, he's in the last little bits of his rehab now.
Thanks, Reza. Keith?
Eddie, I know we kind of touched on it after the match against Everton, but are you able at all to put your finger on why it feels like the more winnable game you've got on paper, you look like you're struggling of late, and then the tougher game, it feels like maybe the players are rising to the occasion a bit more? Is that something you've sensed?
Yeah, possibly, Keith. It is a difficult one, as you say. The psychology of sport, psychology of human beings, really. I think we have struggled in that respect in recent games. We have had the ability to raise our game. We don't want that to be the outcome, of course. We want to be consistent. We want to be our best in every game. So it's a frustration for all of us. We're trying to find solutions to every problem that we have, and there'll always be problems, even if you're winning every game, and you've got to try and continue to find solutions. So that's what we're trying to do. But yeah, that is a bit of a head scratcher for us.
What do you say to the players after that on Saturday? I know you won't have been happy, but then when you look at the next 6 days, Manchester United at home, Man City at home, Barcelona at home, I mean, there's not really too much time to breathe. You kind of just need to get on with it, don't you?
Yeah, we do, but I think we have to get the focus in the right areas. The focus has to be on what we can do better, and we've tried to always, amongst a moment of really high emotion, try and bring it back to what can help the players, what can help our next performance. Players did a really good job yesterday, and I think my staff did a really good job yesterday of trying to bring it back to that. So we did some good work on the training pitch, one of the rare opportunities we've had to do that. Today will be the same. And it's highlighting themes and mentality to our performance that we think will help us in our next run of games, and that's what we're trying to do.
Is there maybe a little bit of pressure at home? You've been so good at home over the years, but you're just looking at the last 3 defeats at home in games you'd have hoped to have won. Is there maybe just a little bit of pressure, you think, on the players there? Yeah,
I think there's always that pressure. I understand sometimes it can be build more than in other games, but I think that pressure's always there when you play for this club. So I think they've become accustomed and used to that. Yes, our home form's been rock solid for so long that when you get a blip like we've had currently, it feels abnormal, it feels unusual, it feels not good. You know, it's hurting us. So we pride ourselves on trying to give our supporters what they want. And we haven't been able to do that in recent games. And I think all energy now is towards that. And that's, of course, Manchester United, which will be a great game for us.
Thank you. Thanks, Keith. Andy?
Well, Eddie, naturally we hear lots of opinions at this stage of a season about Newcastle United's season. What emotion best sums it up from your personal perspective, Newcastle's form domestically in the Premier League?
Over the whole season or just...
Yeah, over the whole season.
I think one of frustration, really. I think when I look back at the games that we haven't executed what we want, and some of the moments in the games where we're uncharacteristically performing in a way that has cost us points, huge frustration, because we feel we're a good team. We feel like we've made progress this season, and then we'll sort of step back from a point where you think we're moving forward. So that's been a mental challenge for all of us, because, as I said, players want success, we want success, and we want to become the team that we want to be quicker. So I think dealing with that and being able to put it somewhere and then focusing on how you can get better, and all the work that normally would go on the training pitch, we're having to condense into really short periods. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. I think you have to look at from my perspective, the mentality of trying to help the players, trying to coach them, trying to educate them, rather than sort of going more negative.
Keith referred to it there, but I mean, the run of fixtures coming up in the next 7 days, Manchester United, Manchester City, Barcelona. Is this week pivotal to Newcastle season? I know you used that word last press conference and I've nicked it from you, but does it feel pivotal to Newcastle season?
Yeah, I mean, they're all pivotal games. When you reel that the games that we have, I think we have to try and be positive. We have to try and relish those games. We can't play with any fear. We can't play with the thought of we haven't won at home for a few games. We've just got to go and attack the games and be as positive we can be. I think if you said this 4 years ago, these are going to be your next run of fixtures in the Champions League, in the FA Cup, you'd have bitten whatever off to be in that position. And we are in that position, and we have to almost play games with our brain to go, don't look back, let's look forward.
Just finally, I think it was a few years ago when the Amazon documentary was going on and there was that team talk from you ahead of the Manchester United game and those words, get into them. Is that going to be the similar sort of message against Manchester United tomorrow night? And also, is this the type of game, weirdly like you were referring to, where we would see the best of Newcastle United under the lights against a side in form like Manchester United?
Well, hopefully. That's not a given. You've got to create that yourself. So every time that we've done that previously has been with the intention from the players to be that team. I think that's always our intention in every game, is to get into them, to be aggressive, to play on the front foot, to be a proactive team rather than a reactive team. I think that's always in our psychology. That's always what we want to be. And hopefully we can be that team again.
Thanks, Andy. Alistair, look north.
Hi, Eddie. Manchester United are a different proposition to maybe what they were a couple of months ago. What do you think Michael Carrick's done to make them so much better, so much harder to play?
I think he's tweaked things tactically. I think he's looks like he's built a really good atmosphere there, and I think then players in a good atmosphere will play better. So I think it's been real positive for them. You can see a big upturn in their general performance. I think they're statistically good in terms of attacking output, defensive output. So then they've got some really good players. It's going to be a great game for us and a great opportunity for us at home to rediscover our best form.
You've spoken about the disappointment at conceding so many goals at home this season. Have you been able to figure out, I guess, why that's happening? Is it some sort of structural thing or a concentration thing or a luck thing or just how it goes? Well,
I don't think it's all season. Early season we were excellent defensively. We were right up there with Arsenal as one of the best teams in all aspects and all metrics. We've certainly had a downturn in the last sort of 8 games, I would say, probably coinciding with, not making this as an excuse, but some big absentees in our back line, which is don't think's helped us. But also then you have to look at the team we have, and I still think the team we have is a very good team that we have to defend better as a team. And so the real focus then is on every player to contribute to that effort.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go with Damien, George and then Dom, please.
Hi, Eddie. You spoke on Saturday about the inconsistent Premier League form being one of the prices you had to pay for European football. When you look at the difficulties Newcastle and Aston Villa have had playing in those competitions over the last 3 years, is it almost impossible for a club outside of the traditional top 6 to compete at that level on all fronts at the moment?
I don't like the word impossible regarding what we can achieve, because I think that then gives everyone a way out and an excuse, really. I think it's difficult. Our schedule this season has been, when you compare it to 2 years ago, the schedule 2 years ago now seemed easy. When you look back in hindsight, with obviously the extra games in the Champions League, we've gone deep into the cup competitions. It's put a real stretch not only on our sort of resources of players available to us to select, but then the energy levels and the sort of the peak physical condition for every game that the players have gone into. No doubt players have gone into games tired and fatigued, and maybe just 1 or 2% off, and that's all you need at this level to not deliver your best. I think we've been slightly unlucky with a few injuries that have really impacted us, and you look, we've got 5 defenders out injured at the moment, and that's tough for any team to absorb, especially when you're playing every 3 days. So I don't think it's impossible, but I think it's difficult. You need a bit of luck that probably we haven't had.
Thank you. We've got George and then Dom.
Morning, Eddie. Yeah, similar question, really. Obviously, other teams have played lots of games as well, but looking at this fixture, it's 45 games for Newcastle this season. It's 30 for Manchester United. How much do you think volume of matches has affected Premier League form? And if you accept that, which it sounds like you do as a kind of basic premise, how does the club get better at it?
Yeah, I think, again, I'm not looking for excuses here. I'm not saying that because we've played 45, there's no way we can do certain things. But I think naturally when you use those two numbers together, I think we would have dropped points because of that, I think, in the Premier League or in other competitions or whatever. But yeah, managing that is, I think we've done it okay, but I just think we've been put in a position where we haven't had the luxury to rotate in positions that we would have rotated, and then players have to go again. And when we got to that situation 2 years ago, we're sort of back into that situation now, and that's not ideal. And we've seen that impact our performances and the performances of certain individual players who are giving their all for the team and the club, but maybe not able to execute their very best game. So I think that's been a real shame. But we have to navigate it better. I think we are trying to do that with better facilities, better staff, better education, better knowledge. But I think that comes with European football, and I think in some senses it's the more you do it, the better you become at it. I don't think there's any secret to that. And a lot of the clubs that are doing really, really well in both and all competitions have done that for a number of years. So we're still on the journey to being able to absorb all of those games.
Dom?
Morning, Eddie. You touched on it before, but only Arsenal have won more games on expected goals than yourselves this season. You spoke previously about having one of the best expected goals defensive records in the Premier League, yet struggling to keep a clean sheet. Why is there such a disparity between the expectations and the reality this season?
Yeah, good question. That one can sometimes in the lap of the gods. I think when you get, using XG, I think I'm a big believer in XG. I believe it does tell a story. I think certainly over one or two games it can have big variance, like you speak about. Over a long term, probably over a season, you'd expect the mean to drop to what it should be. So hopefully that means there's a lot more clean sheets ahead for us.
We'll go Craig, Luke, and then Charlie, please.
Eddie, you've spoken before about living or dying by recruitment. I suppose this is sort of two questions in one. Can you speak to us about that general theme in terms of how important and how impactful recruitment is, but also then specific to this season, you're coming up against the Manchester United team tomorrow who signed 4 players in the summer who have all impacted. You look at their win at the weekend and all 4 were lauded for their contribution. How do you then compare that to some of the struggles you guys have had? So yeah, 2 questions in one really, the general premise, but also specific to this season.
Yeah, I mean, recruitment is everything, and I think was that my quotes, live or die by recruitment, was it? Yeah, okay, well, that's very good. Because I believe in that. I think if you get that wrong, it's very difficult to have the success that you want. I think, again, with recruitment, I think you've got to take a longer term view, because I think you can take a very short term view and make big assumptions that could be wrong. So I think if you take a long term view of our recruitment, certainly since I can only speak since I've been here, I think it's been excellent over the piece. I think when you look back, you can, percentage-wise, I'm not sure there'd be a club that would have the success rate that we've had. Then you look at, of course, short-term, and you can make, as I say, mistakes. I think you've got to look at over a longer-term period if you're going back to the summer for us. And, of course, there's question marks, and, of course, people have different opinions. But just case in point would be Jacob Ramsey. Just give players a bit of time to prove and their worth and to settle into what we asked them to do. I think there's a lot to take in there. So I think Manchester United, as you mentioned, I think have recruited really well. The players that you mentioned, I think, are outstanding players that we were, of course, aware of in the summer. So well done to them. I think for us, I'm really happy with the new players that we've got. Of course, they're all in different journeys to reach their best level. I believe they will get there. I'm really happy with the squad, but of course we've got work to do to be at our best level.
Luke and then Charlie, please.
Probably leads on quite nicely from Craig's question, actually. But what's the situation in Johan Wissa? Because he probably hasn't had the impact that we were expecting him to have.
Yeah, I think I've said many times regarding Johan's situation. Didn't train a lot during the summer, so obviously had a gap there in his physical preparation for this season, then picked up an injury on international duty. That's very, very difficult to adjust to mid-season because as I said before, I think repeating probably the quotes that I've used before regarding this, you have a 6-week pre-season for a reason, to get players adjusted and ready for the new season. We haven't been able to do that with him. But he's been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, a lot of fitness work. He's just come back from a recent injury as well. And we're hoping his best moments are ahead of him. And certainly he's shown a great attitude to his training. He's really, really motivated and keen to do well for the club and to repay the club and the supporters for everything that they've given him. Yeah, that's the situation with him. I don't think it's an ideal introduction for him coming here. I think it's been a tough period for him.
Thank you. Charlie?
Eddie, the Germany manager, Julian Nagelsmann's come out and said he's had a chat with Volta about his form. He's told him to relax. When he first arrived at the club, he was confident. Has that taken a knock in recent times? And have you managed to have a chat with him about his form and the situation he's in right now?
Yeah, as I said, I speak to the players, not necessarily on a daily basis, but I'll be having meetings with them throughout the week on various things, usually associated to their game and trying to help them. Reviewing games, I've done a lot of that with Nick. I think Nick's in a relatively decent place with his game. It's so funny how one performance or one bad game can suddenly bring a string of or a cloud around a player. I think Nick's performances, if you look at them again with a more holistic viewpoint, I think it's been excellent in recent games. I've been pleased with him. Yes, he's maybe not getting the goals that he was in the early season, but I think his all-round game is better than it was. Yeah, so I'm sort of oblivious, as I said so many times before, to the outside opinion. I would be saying the same as his national team manager, to not necessarily to relax, but to carry on enjoying your football, play your way. He's got outstanding qualities. I think he'll only get better for us as time goes on.
Thank you. We'll go Lee Ryder and then Kieran, please.
Eddie, on sort of loyalty to players who continuously get picked, at what stage does it get where you have to do something sort of drastic? Because there's a couple of players who have been struggling of late. There's a World Cup on the horizon as well, so I guess you have to manage all that. But at what stage does it get to the point where you do something drastic selection-wise?
Yeah, the loyalty to players, that makes it sound like you pick players based on what they've done previously, and that's not the case. I'll always pick players that I think will give us the best chance to win the next game. So that's really a simplistic view of how I see it. They've got to train to the maximum level. I'll always judge the next training session. As I said, I'll judge them off their last game. And if I think there's someone better to pick, I have to pick them for the benefit of the team. So that's my view on team selection.
Check on Nick as well. Obviously, there was this sort of narrative after the Everton game. I know you say you don't look at social media, but there was this sort of narrative that he was almost at the centre of all the blame for what happened. He got the 14 touches. What do you do to a player who may be experiencing that? Because the players do look at social media sometimes as well.
Are you talking Nick Volta there? Yeah. Well, yeah, as I said, that's news to me. I will have discussions with players about social media, not necessarily about what the narrative is. There's other people at the club that, of course, do have their eyes across that, because it'd be lazy of us not to. But it's not something that a world that I can go into, because if I go into that, then and I read it and I absorb it, my opinions will be swayed by nonsense. So I'll prefer to keep my brain and my opinions to myself, based off my own eyes. Nick's doing well. I would never overreact negatively or positively towards one performance from any individual player. It's always about the longer term and making sure they're continuing to improve. Of course, Nick's got stuff to work on, and we're working on with him, but I'm happy with him.
Thank you. We've got time for one last one. We've got Kieran, please.
Morning. Do you think the club will have to recruit a little differently this summer, compared to last summer and previous windows, or do you kind of see it as a similar combination of overseas signings and Premier League proven players again?
It depends what you mean. Are you talking where we sign players from? Yeah. I think we've got a very open mind. I don't care where we sign players from, as long as they're good enough to take the team to the next level. What club we're signing, what league we're signing them from is irrelevant to me. As long as we've got the information on the player, we've been tracking him for long enough to have a really good, strong stable opinion on what they are actually like, and whether that player can adapt to the Premier League. The country we're signing is irrelevant. Of course, price and availability and all the other factors that you take in. There's so much that goes into it. But certainly I'm very open-minded in terms of where we're signing players from, and I think we've proved that with the players that we've signed since I've been here.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. That's what Eddie had to say. Interesting. There was a stat there that came out that had me shocked, which was we've played 45 games this season so far. Man United have only played 30. That's that's 50% more than Man United. And also the other thing that came out there was how Carrick's turned Man United around, and the 4 summer signings have been extremely instrumental in that happening. And if we look at those 4 signings, Newcastle were after 3 of them at some stage or another. Cunha, Sesko and Mbeumo. And Man United got them and we didn't. Food for thought, yes, no? Can you hear
Well,
me,
we were
guys?
shopping in the wrong shop, weren't we? Because they were never coming to us.
Yeah, but nonetheless, it does prove the point that those signings have, if you like, hit the ground running and worked. And at the minute, it would appear, well, it's definitely the case that our signings haven't worked.
But just on that point, when they didn't hit the ground running and work, that's how the manager ended up getting sacked for Man United. They've hit the ground running once Carrick came in, and there's been a change of style and style of football. So yes, they've worked now, but they didn't work when they first came in. And could that possibly be the case with us? That if we had a change, that the players that we've got, somebody else could come in and use them to their potential and get the same out of them now that Carrick's obviously getting out of those players.
One way to look at it, yeah. I just think they're better players than we signed.
But if you look at the difference in price between those players, there's not a massive difference between the price Man United paid for players and we've paid for players. So why have we not managed to get our players fired up? As you've said, they've got their new signings going. We deliberately sign Premier League players. Why hasn't that developed with us as well?
Well, if you want to compare Elanga with Mbeumo, you're talking 70 million v 55 million, and we all know we're paid over the top for all of the players. Let's be honest. But wages play a part in it as well. We can't afford to pay the wages that Man United pay. And we haven't got the cashier that they've got. We're just... sooner or later, the fans need to accept that as big as we think the club is, we are not a Man United or a Liverpool or an Arsenal. Yet.
But getting back to the press conference, were you disappointed that there was no questions asked about the goalkeeping situation? And how Pope's been poor, if we want to be honest, over the last few games?
Indeed. Yeah, he has been. What he was asked about was injuries, obviously. Tino is closer and closer. No mention of Miley, by the way, which I was surprised at. Because we've had quite a few comments coming in saying, how does a dead leg take months and months? And he wasn't even asked about Miley.
Is
Miley
Miley
been a miss?
Yeah. is mainly a big worry, Win, how we haven't heard anything, and it does just seem to be dragging on and on and on.
Yeah.
That there's no answer on what's going on with that lad.
Yeah, it's weird. Obviously, we haven't got any medical knowledge of any description, so we can only go on what we're told. But it went from being a dead leg to being, to there being muscular problems or something. And I mean, I don't know, but we probably need the doc here for Gary with his physio knowledge to come and explain that to us. And no doubt we'll get that sometime this week. But it's certainly a puzzle as to how. I mean, even Tino, all of these injuries seem to be taking longer to fix than you would expect. Do you not think so?
Definitely. Are you worried about Miley's injury, Ian, and how long it's taken for him to get back into the team?
I'm worried about the injury, not because it's taken too long. I thought you did the research for it, Win, a week or two ago when it was a dead leg, and found out that there's different grades of dead leg. The third grade of which can take for between 3 to 12 weeks to recover. Because if it's lower down on the muscle where it actually is connected to ligaments and work in the knee, then it swells up around the knee. He can't straighten his leg. It sounds like he's got one of those. But I tell you what, they can end up not healing and need an operation and put him out for 12 months. That's what the worst of a dead leg could be. Hopefully, we're not on one of those. So I think you've just got to give the lad time. And to be honest, at the minute we've got cover for him. He's got time to rest. He doesn't have to be rushed back. He probably wouldn't have got played in his right position anyway if he'd rushed back. So, that's a different discussion, isn't it?
Do you not think that he is so versatile now that
Over to your
do
side,
need him?
Loki. Have you seen?
I know I've been very impressed with you, and I've been over the moon.
No, I agree.
Do you not think with
I
him?
agree. He's one of my favourite players.
Yeah. Do you not think with him though, he is somebody that we do need to get back as soon as possible because he can help in so many positions. So he could be the one that gives Trips a rest. He could be the one potentially that plays in central defensive. We're desperate.
Yeah.
And he's obviously his best position's midfield. He's such a versatile player for where he is a massive miss at the minute.
We haven't played him at right wing yet, because let's face it, we've got a lot of misfiring right wingers, and that's his side, and he puts a great ball in. Deceptively fast with his big, long, loping stride as well. There you go, Eddie. There's somewhere to bring him back into.
I can just see the comments flying when Miley comes back into the team and Eddie plays him at right wing. Oh, wouldn't that go down a storm?
Tell you what, you might get a decent cross in from that side. That would make a change, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
it could be the number 10. If you get the number 10 close to Volta that you need to bring him into the game. We need. I know he's versatile, and we'll take a look a little bit. We've got players who can play on these.
Just getting back to the press lad, do you think there was any tough questions there for Eddie, or any questions Eddie Howe struggled with, or was it the same old where they're just pretty much asking him bog standard questions and he's giving bog standard answers?
It was softer than it's been of late, because the last couple of press conferences, at least he has been asked a couple of telling questions, shall we say, and it was back to back burner peripheral stuff today, I think.
It's a little bit of a mismatch, isn't there? In the lost all of these Premier League games in a row, but we've actually won. Is it 4 out of the last 6? I can't remember. I get confused.
Yeah,
we've lost the last 2 because it was City as well, wasn't it? But it was a good performance. So there's a mismatch between us being second bottom of the league table in the Premier League on 3 points.
Current form.
But then we've won the cup matches. I mean, is it even too late to get worked up about not picking up points in the Premier League because we're so far behind?
Did you hear? Did you hear?
I think it's got to help for the cup if we could play well in the league as well.
Did you hear what Borky and I were talking about earlier on, Ian? About if we don't qualify for Europe and PIF stick with Eddie, so next season with one, oh, he's gone again.
I can't read your question.
So next season with one game a season, one game a week, Eddie then produces another stellar season that will qualify for the Champions League, do well in the cups, maybe even win a cup. Other than left with the same dilemma that we're going into a season where we're going to have to play 2 games a week, and historically, Eddie hasn't fared well at 2 games a week. So as Borky said, it's kind of double-edged sword, you know. We know you can do okay with 1 game a week, but do we then trust him to go into the next season 2 games a week? Or are you just are you already done with him now, Ian? Can you hear, Ian?
No, I don't.
I think, like we said beforehand, when you know, with him, he is a good manager in those sort of circumstances of doing the 7 days a week. But you know, can we just keep going on this cycle where as soon as he gets more than that, he can't handle it? That's the big problem.
Yeah. We can see you and hear you, but it would appear you can't hear us, Ian.
I'll keep bouncing. I keep bouncing in and out with late on because I couldn't get the bloody camera working. I've got a dodgy connection, but I've had a dodgy connection 5 or 6 times because I've been in and out to try and fix it.
Yeah.
So I do apologise.
No
But Ian,
I think
what
it's
are
gone
your
wrong again,
thoughts
and
on
it's gone,
him?
and we're back now. Good.
What are your thoughts on that? Is Eddie Howe the right manager for next season?
Yeah, well, I'm now thinking that he's mirroring what
No, we're gonna have to let you go, Ian, because yeah.
Bournemouth, where he plateaued out and ended up getting them relegated because he's.
Yeah, we're going to have to let Ian go. He's having too much trouble with his connection there.
I think, with Eddie Howe, when I think it has to be a massive discussion at the end of the season. There's nothing going to. I mean, I'm Eddie Howe, you know that, but there's nothing going to happen before that point. So you know, it's a massive discussion to have at the end of the season. Do we want the guy that we know potentially will get back into Europe the season after and will have a decent Premier League season, but then when he gets there, can't progress with, or do we bite the bullets and just say, look, at this point we need Eddie gone, somebody else in who can get into Europe again, but also can help progress the next season as well,
and potentially start the managerial merry-go-round, which is what my worry is.
But that's always going to be the worry. When that's always going to be the case, that no matter when Eddie leaves, that could happen, and we've got to all be realistic about that. But you hope Wilson, you hope Hodgkinson, and you hope the PIF are in a position where they've already started to monitor which type of manager and which actual manager they want, and when Eddie does move on, you know, there's somebody can come in who can, you know, push the club forward.
Let's have a look at some of these the chats I've started. I would prefer us not to qualify for the Conference League next season. We must get Warhouse in order, says Geordie up in Edinburgh. Kevin says there are valid reasons, but is Eddie the man to solve this problem? It doesn't look like he is, as we're sitting in 13th position in the league. And Paul Sprague saying, yeah, but the same players were promised things by the club that hasn't happened. Hence why the rat left, and more will follow this summer. Tino, Tenali, Gordon will leave without Europe. Jody back again. I'm concerned there is now too much overhaul to do in the coming summer. Change must come now. Well, there's nothing you can do now, really, when to get a new manager. Borky, can you just take over for five minutes? I've just got someone at the door.
Sorry there, guys. Yeah, as you say, I think Eddie taking over for the someone taking over for the summer is important. It is an important point, and who we can get in it is going to be dependent on where we are. Sorry, guys, I just realised I was muted there. I completely agree in regards to the Geordie journalists in regards to, are they good enough? Are they asking the right questions? I completely agree they're not. The big question today should have been around goalkeepers, in my view. Is Pope good enough? Is Pope going to get wind to the places that we want to go? But there wasn't one single question about that. So, it's a difficult one because they are so sort of, I don't want to say Eddie Howe positive, but there is sort of an Eddie Howe vibe around all the journalists. So I think that is a question to be asked. I don't know what you think, Win.
Well, you're saying there's an Eddie Howe vibe around all the journalists, because I think the journalists have been around the block a few times and they've seen what we've got and what could potentially go wrong. So, I think they're naturally, like myself, a bit reticent to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We've got Boomba here saying, we won't play well next season under Eddie. We haven't had a play style since the Carabao Cup final. That again, commonly misheld belief. After the Cup final, we won 5 out of 6 and scored 22 goals or something. And it was only when Isaac downed tools for the last 3 games that the wheel came off. And it still didn't come off completely.
Hang on, Win. You've said that very confidently there. We did have a drop off towards the end of last season.
The last 3 games.
We struggled to get into the Champions League in the end. And then that form carried on through pre-season and into this season. And you can use the Isaac thing as an excuse to a certain point. But, after, 28 games in the Premier League, 45 games overall, there should have been solutions found to Isaac leaving.
Well, I agree, and there hasn't been. But again, there's reasons for that. One of the replacements for Isaac has been injured and not fit all season. So and let's face it, Wissa is no Isaac. Well, he might be an Isaac now, but he's certainly not the Isaac that played for us. KG is saying, I'm tired of these press conferences, tired of listening to Eddie's stuff and these soft questions from the journalists. Well, sadly, there's nothing we can do about that. Where would we be if Amanda and Dad hadn't been pushed out? Our regression has been disturbing. What are the hierarchy playing at? We seem to be backing the status quo. Ken Bell, Walter needs to play up front, keep him up front and develop him there. Moving him around is confusing him and everyone else. Yeah, well, if you look back now to when he came, when he was scoring, then he went off the boil, and then we went through a spell where he was just not doing anything up front. So we kind of did stick with him there, and it wasn't improving at all. And that was a bad run of results that we went on then. So are you prepared to sacrifice a bad run of results in order to... So you're using match time as training time effectively. So you're prepared to sacrifice results in order to perfect the system, as it were. That, to me, is an option, but it's not a preferred option by any stretch of the imagination. You cannot afford to give points away. Now, the argument against that is, well, we've given points away anyway, and we are no further forward than we would have been had we adopted that principle. So you definitely need to make a decision with Volta, and I'm not making Baltimore the scapegoat, because there's too many players throughout the team who haven't performed. You know, this is not one guy not performing. This is not Anthony Gordon not performing. This is not Chow not performing all of a sudden. This is not Nick Pope not performing. It's throughout the team. We have been poor this season. How many times have we done commentaries this season saying, you know, we cannot pass the ball 5 yards in midfield? And that's everybody. You know, Bruno included, Tonali included. Just sloppy passing in midfield and lack of bait in midfield. That has been the recurrent theme throughout. And, of course, missing chances.
So, when on that point, why is Voldemort getting called out so much, especially by the local press, and especially by some of the people on this channel? Why is it Voldemort that's being called out as the problem? I think the problem is the team, not Voldemort.
Who's calling Voldemort out on this channel?
Well, yourself, Christina, you know, the Happy Clappers.
I've never called Voldemort out.
And I don't know if you heard Craig Hope's press conference the other day, but he related Voldemort to sort of, I think it was a Volkswagen Beetle instead of a BMW. You know, why are the local press doing things like that to own players?
Well,
you know,
I certainly didn't hear that comment, because I would disagree with it. And I've never, all I've ever said about Voldemort is that for me, he's not a number 9. He's not an out-and-out centre-forward striker. That's not his game at all, and it's not what he plays for. Despite what Chris would have us believe, it's not what he does for Germany at all. He drops deep for Germany, the same as we've been asking him to. But the problem is, he hasn't got the mobility for the drop deep and then be the man up front waiting for crosses and passes into the box.
So why did we sign him when as a striker? You know, I maybe agree with your point that he's not a natural number 9 as such, and what our thoughts are. He's not an Isaac type of player. If we weren't going to develop this team around him, why did we sign him?
Well, again, it's been said many times. You know, he wasn't top of the list. You know, we were in for Pedro first. We were in for Sesko. We were in for Ekatike. All of these players turned us down, and so we were desperate for strikers. We had to go and buy some strikers. We didn't have a striker. We had a Sula on our books. Wilson's gone, Isaac's gone, and Isaac going at the last minute has caused massive problems this season. So,
I mean, I agree. I agree that the Isaac situation wasn't great, but I just don't see why you guys keep saying Baltimore's not the best player as such. In regards to that, why then did we sign him? Why did we get that guy in? Is this the replacement?
because he's a top striker.
But you've just said he's not a striker. You've just said he's not a striker.
He's not a number 9, which is what he was trying to replace. And as I say, really, I thought we'd signed Baltimore to play behind Wissa, and Wissa hasn't been available. That's what I thought would sign him for, to play exactly the way he plays with another striker, which he's always done throughout his career, and it hasn't happened. So that's the key thing there. Brian Penny saying, we want to be a big team. You play all the games in all competitions. Simple. Howe stated he didn't need to strengthen in January 26 window, which was a stupid call. So it's on Howe now. I don't know that Howe said he didn't want to strengthen, and he said he wanted to buy players every window, as far as I could.
No, you're wrong there, Win. Howe said that there wasn't a need to strengthen in January, and Hodgkinson and Wilson both came out and said there was money to spend in January.
Well,
So it seems
all of the press conferences I saw leading up to the transfer window and beyond we are waiting to see what's going to happen, because at the time we had we've still got the injuries, and he said we're waiting to see what happens with the injuries, because at the time we had, and we still have, Kraft out, Shea out, Botman out, Tino out, and Howe said in the build up to the window we're waiting to see how, because at that stage we had no idea then that Livramento was still going to be out in March. They were talking then about, he said today, his exact quote today was, Tino is getting closer and closer. He's been saying that since January.
But with that, why both the hierarchy have said that there was money available and we could have signed a player in January. Why didn't Howe go out and find a defender in January to help with the current issue? I mean, if you look back and clip back the time, we all were sitting there saying, either Eddie Howe deserves the fact that we get a defender to help him to progress this season, or he desperately needs a defender to progress this season. If the money was there, why didn't Howe spend it and go out and buy that defender that we needed?
Well, I can't answer that question. All I can say is that, you're saying Hopkinson and Wilson said there was money to spend. Well, why didn't Ross Wilson go and identify the player? Because I don't believe for 1 second again that he would have identified a player and then he said, oh, no, I didn't want him.
Because as we've seen in the past, Eddie Howe was very stubborn about what players were signed. I mean, look at the Gay situation that last summer. You know what? He would not settle on another defender. There was nobody else in his head that he wanted apart from that one player. And look the way it's got to now. He seems to be, Eddie Howe seems to be very mindful of which players he wants, which is great to a point, but then, you have to be adaptable and you have to look for other players as well. You can't just focus in on one guy and want to get him.
All I'm saying is I do not believe Ross Wilson has gone to Eddie in the January window and said, right, I can get him or him. And Eddie said, I don't want any of them. I don't believe that.
So in which case...
We've got no way of knowing.
But in which case, if that hasn't happened, Win, why isn't Hodgkinson as the CEO going, hang on, Wilson, you haven't given Eddie Howe any choice of players.
Well,
you've been here for 6 months. If you can't do it over that period, I'm sorry, mate, you're gone. So, or if it's been a case that Wilson's give Eddie's choices and Eddie's refused to sign them, it has to be sort of Eddie Howe. Look, you haven't got the control over this club. Wilson's going to buy these players. If you don't want them and you're refusing to play them, you're gone.
Yeah, well, I agree with both of those. I agree with both of those scenarios. And the fact that neither have happened tells its own story, or the fact that neither have happened that we know about. There might well have been those conversations. You know, it might, for example, you can imagine, right? So Hopkinson then Wilson says, look, I've given him these options. He doesn't want them. So then Hopkinson has turned around and he said, right, you've said you don't want them, that's fine, but you're going to live or die by what happens afterwards. And no doubt that's what will happen.
100%, mate.
Yeah. We've got Brian Penny saying every number 9 who rejected Newcastle has played at 9 for the clubs they joined. None went in the midfield, and look what they are doing now, scoring goals. And Walter Mortar was scoring goals. Now, nothing. We would have been where Spurs are if it wasn't for Nick's goals and everyone calling him out. Eddie put him up front where he belongs. Put him up front where he belongs, not Gordon. But the press doesn't work anymore. Now, are we talking about the press as in the press conference?
I think both, potentially.
It is both. The press doesn't work anymore. That's right. They're not asking the right question. You burn it. No, the thing is, the press can work if you've got a big enough squad a big enough, quality enough squad to do it. It's the way forward.
There seems to be a theme running through the chats that are going up that Eddie Howe can't adapt. Do you now agree that is the case, that he can't adapt to playing 3 games a week, and he can't adapt to changing styles of football or doing the right subs?
I think it's looking more and more like that. Yeah, you know that the evidence is there. I'm saying that there's a million valid reasons for to want rid of Eddie. I just haven't fully committed to any of those reasons yet.
Well, you did at one point.
Well, that was because at the time, you know, we're going over old ground again. I said if we're not within 3 points of the Champions League after the Christmas fixtures, Eddie out. And we were within 3 points. So after the Man United game, it looked as though that was going to be impossible. But lo and behold, the miracles worked and we were there. So that was when, for a very brief time. But I still think he's got enough credit in the bank to give him a fresh breath, shall we say. Bobby Robson would be rotating Shahar and Trippier right now. He had faith in the youth. He had faith in the youth that he bought, not faith in the youth that he was bringing through from the training ground. Real days. I think Walter Mortar, in his most recent 25 games up front, he scored 3 goals. He wasn't even holding the ball up. We needed to shift him, but it hasn't worked really. But that's a stat in itself, 25 games up front and 3 goals. Even bringing in a player like Ruben Neves helps us control games. Can you adapt from cardigans to a shirt and tie, Boogie says,
Was that I'll wear a shirt and tie the night if you keep all your chats very polite and nice towards us. I'll quite happily wear a shirt and tie.
Right, well, we're coming up to the end of the show. Have you got any particular point that Eddie made during that presser that you kind of agreed with or didn't agree with?
I think, as I say, it was a pretty bog standard presser. Pretty easy for Eddie to bounce the questions off. In regards to Eddie, I think this month's going to really prove the pudding with him, sort of thing. I think he has to be moving this team forward now, and he has to do well in the cups, basically. I mean, the league form looks so bad that I don't see we're getting anywhere in the league. So we'll have to use the cups, and potentially the cups are our only chance of getting into Europe now.
Matt Francis is saying, how can he adapt? We don't train much. We have injuries to starters. The same players make the same mistakes, but he can't drop them because of the depth. Note to do with Eddie. Well, I think it's definitely got something to do with Eddie, Matt.
Well, he's bought them players. That's the problem. He's chose those players.
Even I would have to admit that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, folks, that's it for today for the presser. As I say, the key thing that I brought away was quite a shocking statistic when I heard it, that so far this season, Newcastle United have played 45 games. Our opponents on Wednesday night have played 30 games. So we've played 50% more games than Man United have played.
But who would you rather be at this stage? Would you rather be Newcastle United, who are in this last 16 of the Champions League, the FA Cup?
Oh, steady
and
bogey.
the Premier League.
The bright side.
No, I'm not coming on the bright side, but I'm just simply saying, you mentioned the amount of games played. Would you want to be on 30 games, or would you want to be on 45?
I want
I'd
to
a
be
hell of a
on
lot more to be on
45,
45, yep.
Thank you very much, yeah. Semi-final of the Carabao, last 16 of the Champions League, still in the Cup. Bring it on. See you all later, guys and gals.
Cheers, guys.
Oh.
You are listening to NUFC Talk Radio, the voice of the Toon Army, live daily on the website, on YouTube, on the DAB, and on every online radio directory. NUFC Talk.